Well, hi and hello to all the popcorn talkers, and welcome to another episode of Second Way to Kill a Werewolf. My name is Damon, and with me as always is my co-host, Matthias Chuckles Rodriguez. Matthias, how you doing today, man?
I just started laughing, just to start the show, and then, he decides to just use that against me. I'm sorry that I have a song in my heart and a laugh in my voice, Damien, but it's okay. I see where we stand now.
Your apology is accepted. No, I'm kidding. It's okay to laugh. Hell, I'm doing it now. But hell, folks, if this is your first time joining us, let me tell you a little bit about what to expect. We are a podcast dedicated to covering all things pop culture and movies, TV shows, and pretty much anything that's streaming that grabs our attention. Throughout the show, we'll bring up some topics, lend our voices to opinions, and hopefully that will lead to engaging with you all in the future on our social media platform on Instagram and TikTok at Second Way to Kill a Werewolf, where we encourage you to post any comments or questions there that you may have about the show. Also, if you happen to be listening to this on Spotify, be sure to give us a 5-star review and drop us a comment about the episode. We want to hear the voices of the Second Way listeners. So with that little introduction out of the way, that's going to bring us to our first segment here, where we like to discuss what we've been watching. Maybe it's something you've never seen, maybe it's something from your past that you can rediscover, or maybe it's just something, to help you decide what to watch tonight. Either way, we're going to go ahead and help you pick out what to watch tonight or today or tomorrow, or maybe we have no influence over your decision at all in what to watch. But if you find our little show here entertaining, well, hopefully it helps you to figure out what to watch. But in any case, I'm going to go ahead and kick it off here. And what I've been watching, actually, not what I've been watching, what I watched. Been watching? I don't know. Anyways, I know I've kind of talked a little bit about the House of the Dragon series, so the season 3 that has been really good. It's just it's that age-old tale, or that same old story of they take too long in between these seasons. And granted, I think I don't know for sure, but I don't know if it was just a 2-year wait, which for a production quality like this, I guess is about the norm of what you would expect. But I seem to recall Game of Thrones in the beginning coming out year after year. I don't know. Am I misremembering, or am I a liar, Matthias? Do you know, or did that happen?
No, you're making this up. But no, you're right. I mean, it seems that production was a lot faster back then, because I don't remember it being a case of like how it is now, where it's like 2 years, if not 3, to wait on seasons now. But I remember Game of Thrones just being like back to back to back to back, and I don't know if that's because of its popularity at the time, or maybe they just kind of had multiple seasons like in the pipeline already kind of done. But it seemed like you could enjoy a reasonable amount of time between each season without getting angry like most people are doing now, or like, okay, what's the holdup? What's going on in the background? But no, you're right. It was a shorter timeline back then.
I thought so, because I seem to recall really like getting on that cliffhanger, and then you're like, oh man, I can't wait till next season. I mean, or next year, when next year actually meant next season, versus, you get ending a series ending on a cliffhanger, and you're like, man, I can't wait to be 50 when this comes out, because who knows, because these stalls, I don't know what they're really attributing it to. I can understand certain aspects if these actors, and I mean, I don't know what their daily routine ins and outs of are within Hollywood, but I don't really see a large portion of them in other features during the time that they're not doing these seasons. And as far as shooting as well, I mean, that's one thing, but I don't know. I really don't know what it is that's attributed to now. I guess apparently 2 years is the norm that we have to wait. And I could see where somebody would say like, well, back then production was different and blah, blah, blah. And that's if you were talking about shows like, I don't know, ER back in the day. And by ER, I mean like season 1 ER, not like season whatever it ended, because that show went on forever. And my point is, I know some people would probably make the point of saying, well, back in the 1990s, early 2000s, A, B, and C, blah, blah, blah. That's why. And now the production quality is so much better and all this stuff. And granted, yes, there is some amazing production quality to these series for sure. But 2 years is the norm now? Anyways, I'm bringing this up because I hadn't really been that into this season. I kind of just tuned in, and before I know it, I don't know, 4 weeks went by. So then I started binging, and then I just stopped, and then I went again. And then there was like one, I think episode 3 that happened that was different than the others. If it's the one that I'm thinking of, it had Rhaenyra, who I believe finally took the crown. And it was just this really good, I guess, not following it. They basically followed her throughout her reign, or her first day of being queen, and really giving the viewer an idea of the pressure that she felt, and all of a sudden the anxiety that came about from, well, the old saying, heavy is the head that wears the crown, and also be careful what you wish for type of adage, because the way that this was shot and the score behind it was different than other episodes that I've ever seen in Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon, for instance. It was kind of a unique artistic twist to really give the viewer an idea of the amount of pressure and worry or anxiety, I guess, that she had after now taking the throne, which that was an interesting episode. So fast forward to the season finale, and don't worry, I'm not going to give any spoilers, but everyone dies. No. That's always my answer for anything. Could be a Mickey Mouse production. Everyone died. Sorry. It was a good ending. I still feel like it would have been more impactful if just these series these seasons were released season to season, year to year, because you would still have an idea of who these characters are, where they're at in certain circumstances, what they're involved in, so that if and when one should meet their demise or sail off into the sunset, or I don't know, do anything else that would be meaningful in the series, you would get a little bit more of that involvement. And maybe I'm just talking to the general audiences. I'm a general audience member of this. I'm not really heavy in the lore. If you were to give me a name from, Game of Thrones, well, maybe Game of Thrones, because that's fresh in my mind. But if you were to give me a name other than maybe Rhaenyra and Daemon, and no, that's pretty much it. There might be a couple that I might be like, oh, is this multiple choice? Okay, yes, I got it. But if you were to tell me name 5 characters from House of the Dragon, I probably couldn't do it. So just to give you an idea, general audience, it was good though. Overall, would I say, if you haven't watched this and you were a fan of the series, and maybe you just realize, oh wow, look, all the episodes are available now for season 3, it's worth the watch for sure. And it wasn't disappointing. So I will say that. But that's pretty much what I've been watching. What about you, Matthias? What have you been watching?
Well, I've been watching something completely different and not related to any sort of thrones or dragons or houses. I've been watching a little show called Chopped that was on the Food Network a long, long time ago.
Very nice.
Now, for anybody who doesn't know what that is, it's never heard of it or whatever. Basically, the whole premise of that show, it is a reality TV show. I guess you can kind of say it is. Well, yeah, there's real people, duh. But the whole premise is that you have the chefs that are brought on by these other sort of like really famous and popular network chefs, and the whole thing for them that they have to do in a short amount of time is create a appetizer, an entree, and a dessert. Now, the kick in this is the whole thing is that they can only select whatever is in their box of ingredients. So it's like 4 ingredients usually. So the mandate there is that you have to use those ingredients in some sort of fashion in your dish. You can, of course, do whatever with seasoning, spices, and what have you, but you have to use those 4 ingredients. And you would think, under that premise, it's like, okay, that doesn't seem that bad. It's like, these are like top level chefs or whatever, it's like they have a whole book of knowledge to just pull from and make dishes, and then it should be easy. No, it's not, because there's some really weird and wacky things that they introduce. Sometimes it's like, oh, we're gonna have you use like fresh octopus or whatever, or we're gonna have you use some like old ingredients that nobody ever really uses except for like some sort of like uh preserve or whatever. It changes up from episode to episode, but I like it in the sense that it's a fun little episode because you have that separation of what's happening there to where like, man, I can't do it. I wouldn't
Yeah.
be put in that situation, but it's entertaining because you see that some people like just really have a mind of how, not just sort of like how ingredients work in conjunction with other pieces and all that stuff, but just how like how they what they know about flavor profiles of things. So it's not like, okay, well, chocolate only works as like as a sweetener. It's like, no, chocolate can be used as sort of kind of like something to break the acidity of something, or just as kind of like a little bit of that hint of goodness that all of that kind of works with that. Now, it's a good little show, and I've just been watching a lot of the older episodes and just kind of seeing, man, some people are so talented. I couldn't do it. I think the best that I ever got was sometimes I have like different leftovers in my fridge, and I'm like, what can I do with these? It's like, how can I mix, leftover spaghetti with, I don't know, maybe leftover fried chicken or something. And that's the wealth that I have of like, maybe I could be on Chopped because I did that. But it's a lot harder than it looks. But yeah, that's what I've been watching.
I mean, that sounds great to me. It's spaghetti with fried chicken. I mean, why the hell not? I'm hungry as hell right now. So that sounds like a great idea to me. Yeah, right. That is I mean, like, even if you think that you could come up with the idea, it's like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to go ahead and put this and this together and blah, blah, blah. But you also have to do it within that set time frame, which is very, very difficult. I mean, if you really want to test yourself, you can, I don't know, have your significant other or sibling or, I don't know, mom, dad, or whatever, just time you for the heck of it. And then just make your own little Chopped episode or something like that. And they'll give you, they're going to give you like tuna fish, chocolate, and oranges. It's like, wait, what? Good luck. I don't even know what you would do with that. That just came off the top of my head. But it's anytime where you have the pressure on you, I always give them a lot of credit, these chefs that go on there, because I too watch that show. And I'm amazed every single time that, when they say, and hands down or back away or whatever, like it always comes down. It's funny because it never fails. It always comes down to like the last 5 seconds. And no matter what, they always end up like with literally needing every bit of those 5 seconds to finish plating.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, the pressure will get you for sure. And they're competing sometimes for some big bucks there. They've done quite a bit with spin-offs of that series as well. Mm-hmm. It's definitely something that's continued to evolve. I don't watch it as much as I used to. I used to watch the Food Network a lot. Chopped was one of the ones I really liked. This was a different network, but Top Chef was another one that I used to watch a lot. Good memories, because that you go through eras of your life remembering some of these series. For instance, True Blood. I remember that was the first series that I ever watched. I think it was the first series that I ever watched or binged with my wife back when we weren't married yet. So, TV shows, that's also the point of this discussion that we talk about as far as what we've been watching, because sometimes, yeah, it is something that you rediscover and the series itself, maybe time doesn't hold up with it. Like, for instance, True Blood. Mm-hmm. It's okay. But what's important is some of the memories you may have had that are associated with that, whatever it may be, whether it's Chopped, True Blood, or in my case, Game of Thrones / now House of the Dragon that I'll probably look back on fondly. But in any case, I hope that our little rant here and raves just help to, well, limit your doom scrolling today and on Netflix or Hulu or whatever your streaming choice is, a platform of choices. And just, I don't know, sometimes you just need to push play. But who pushed play, or who pushed play quite a bit? People who went to the movies. That was a horrible comparison. In any case,
okay.
Spiderman Brand New Day is winning big because at the time of this recording, it's already been out, I think, for like 2 weeks. So by the time this airs, it'll probably be like, I don't know, the third week out already, and by then it'll probably have made all the money in the world. But at the time of this recording, the latest records that we have had for it are basically huge. I mean, a $360 million domestic opening. So I'm talking about opening weekend here, and actually came out to a $932 million global debut. So 360 million domestically, 932 globally. And from what I understand, as far as the international opening, the global opening, it is now the second biggest global opening in movie history, second only to Avengers Endgame, which opened at $1.223 billion worldwide. Them's are some big numbers. It's I don't know. I guess who would have thought Spider-Man is a popular guy. Yeah, at this point though, it kind of makes me wonder, is Spider-Man the most valuable IP within Marvel? I mean, it almost did, well, maybe not almost, but 1.223 or 1.2 billion versus 932 million for a global. I mean, it's within there. I mean, don't get me wrong, 300 million is 300 million or so as far as difference, but single-handedly ish, it almost had the same global impact that Avengers Endgame had. And Avengers Endgame is like, I don't know what, 20 movies worth, how many years worth of storytelling that, culminated in that film, and had Avengers Infinity War to also propel it. And Spider-Man single-handedly, and I'm saying by the sake of the title, because the name of the movie was Spider-Man Brand New Day, not Spider-Man and Hulk Brand New Day, or Spider-Man, Hulk, and Punisher Brand New Day. Single-handedly was able to do $932 million global for its global debut. I don't know. What's your opinion on that?
Well, people sure love their Spider-Man. That's really my takeaway with this. I mean, you kind of said it already a little bit there, where in comparison to something like Avengers Endgame, which, is a movie with an immense amount of build-up, a huge ensemble cast, and a sequel to one of like the biggest, movies after, Infinity War. All that to still be in that same camp with essentially just one popular superhero. Of course, there's Punisher and the Hulk in there as well too. But to be in that same camp with only just like one standout superhero like Spider-Man, that's there's a lot to say with that. That means that Spider-Man still holds such an important place in people's hearts in terms of like what a superhero means and what a superhero is. And I feel like that's Marvel, I think, understands that now, that's their bread and butter going forward. And even Sony too, as well too, understands like they're never going to let go of that as well too. So they have to make sure that the reins are still very tight on that, because yeah, I think their focus now is what else can we get? What else can we do with Spider-Man after the fact, after the end of this film, and then whatever he ends up doing in Secret Wars, that's going to be also very important to the brand as well too. And for me, I haven't seen the movie yet, so I really don't know too much about specifics of like what goes on in the film or sort of what it leads into. Spider-Man has never been my favorite superhero. I'll just get that right off the go. But from what I heard with this film, it's that even regardless of that, of just having, Spider-Man, be a key figure in this film, it's still a solid movie. Like, it's still very fun to watch. It's got really great, story beats, a mix of action and drama and comedy. Like, it's just beyond being a Marvel film with, a lot of funding behind it. It's still just a great, summer flick. So for anybody that wants to sort of talk about, are people still up for superhero films, or is there superhero fatigue? Doesn't seem like it really with this. It seems like people are just kind of tuning into this because it's a solid movie for the most part. And yeah, I mean, it's surprising. I didn't think we were going to hear this news that it was going to be reaching, $1 billion, but here we are. In the flip side, DC doesn't have anything to answer for that, unfortunately. Supergirl should have been a $1 billion movie. I really wish it was, but yeah, we're not here. So yeah, Marvel is still kind of a force to be reckoned with in the box office. So yeah.
Yeah, Marvel, speaking of that force to be reckoned with, they hold four of the biggest global openings ever. Number one, of course, we just said was Avengers Endgame at 1.223 billion. Spider-Man Brand New Day now at 932 million. Avengers Infinity War at 640 million. And then another Spider-Man movie, Spider-Man No Way Home, was another movie that that came in at 600 million. It another, I guess, record that it's going after that I'm wondering if it will take it, because when I say this, no movie in the history of cinema has taken this record. It is unclaimed. And that is $1 billion domestically. That's an unclaimed record. The closest that got to it, and that the record holder, I guess you could say, the one that's got closest to it right now, I believe was the I was going to say Avengers, The Force Awakens. Star Wars, The Force Awakens. That one, I don't see it in my notes here, but I believe, if memory serves me correct, achieved 932 million domestically. Again, I'm saying domestically. Globally, yeah, of course, obviously that record's been shattered a long time ago, but still, domestically, no movie in the history of cinema has ever claimed $1 billion straight up domestically. Spider-Man Brand New Day could get there. It's a possibility. It's on track to be able to compete with those numbers. And I would not be very much surprised if by the next episode, because I'm actually planning on seeing this movie this weekend. I'm going to go with my family to go check it out. So I mean, with me being a big fan of like, event movies and MCU and DCU, all that stuff, with me being a fan of that, and this now being the third week, and I'm still going to go, that tells me that there's people like me that also still haven't had a chance to see this movie. I haven't even attempted to buy the tickets yet. I'm almost wondering if I'm going to look in the app and be like, oh, well, guess next weekend, or guess this weekend isn't a possibility. Maybe next weekend. I don't know. So I'm going to check that out. But I don't know. It's like I said before when I asked you about Spider-Man. Is Spider-Man Marvel's biggest IP now? Is Spider-Man, here's a better way of phrasing it, is Spider-Man bigger than the MCU now? What do you think?
I think it has the potential to. And I think they just done such a really good job just with their characterization of Spider-Man really as a hero. They haven't really made it to where he's very one note or anything like that at all. I feel they've always been able to sort of write him into a crisis to where he really needs to utilize not just his standing as a superhero and with all of his powers and all that, but just him as like a human being. How is he going to navigate his identity, and how is he going to navigate trying to sort of find the best way to save his friends, even though he can't really necessarily reveal himself in the way that he was able to in the past. So, I mean, the whole crux of really A Brand New Day is still that he has to keep his identity secret, because he's trying to make sure that those that he loves are protected and all that. So they've done a really good job with creating a captivating story with that, and I feel there's a lot from that people can draw from and people can be captivated about, and I think that's all it takes. Again, if you have a great writing team, a great director, whatever this movie is about, you, I think, can more or less still create a pretty decent draw. Like, yeah, Spider-Man's a big name. Everybody, I feel, knows him at the same level as probably like your Batman or your Superman or your Iron Man. I feel he has that level of prestige now more than ever. But the fact that they were able to sort of generate such a, well-done film with this, that's just, people are talking about it. People are telling their friends. They're telling their family. Some people are watching it more than once. And from what I heard, there is some things that sort of kind of give you some sort of ideas to like what the next step is for Marvel, or at least like what the next adventure will be. And so I think that's another thing too, is that people are wanting to see, okay, what's the lead up to this? Because the next thing we have is Doomsday, and after that is Secret Wars, really. And people want to know what's exactly going to happen. I mean, I think Doomsday is definitely going to be one of those movies that probably reaches the same threshold as this one, where it makes, $1 billion, if not $2 billion, within, a very fast time frame. But yeah, I think there is something about Spider-Man that people just really, really enjoy. And yeah, he's just a great character within their system right now, and yeah, the money's just rolling in for them.
So is the MCU back? Or
Not yet.
is it, no, I was going to say, or is it that Spider-Man is just, too big to fail? Like the measurement to measure Spider-Man, the success of Spider-Man is like, well, I mean, it's Spider-Man. Of course, it's going to put up those numbers. Maybe if it was Thor and it put up those numbers, or Captain America and it put up those numbers, maybe it'd be like, yep, the MCU's back. Like if Captain America, Brave New World, had accomplished these numbers, I guess that would be a good sign. That's like, yep, Marvel's back. They put together this amazing movie and all that. Or is it that, like I said, with Spider-Man, is it just like, well, Spider-Man's going to put up those numbers anyways,
Yeah.
I think that if the MCU can continue to make these movies event movies, and before anybody says like, well, not every single movie can be an event movie, they're timing the release of these movies at the optimal time for blockbuster events, summer and winter. If you're tracking to release your superhero film during the summer, you've got to make it an event film. If you're tracking to release your superhero film in December, as we've now come to find out as far as winter box office, it's got to be an event film. It's got to be a Lord of the Rings, I'm going to make an evening of this type deal, and I am going to pay, I don't know, between $30 to $40 just to watch this movie alone. Not even for the popcorn and all that stuff. You have to convince me that it is worth it. And the way you do that is marketing, of course, and the trailers and the investment. Because I think that, as we saw from one of the other record holders that was also Spider-Man, I think it was like 600 million for that domestic debut. Well, this one is now 900 and something million for global debut. Clearly, this was an investment that the seed was planted from part 1, part 2, part 3, and of course Avengers and all that stuff and appearances. And now here it is, Spider-Man part 4, and almost single-handedly, without any other Avengers in the film, with the exception, like I said, of Hulk, it was able to put up an Avengers like box office. And I think that it's just the story that's very compelling for this. I think that's what's bringing audiences. Number one, of course, it's an event film. They clearly are putting a lot of effort into the story. I mean, I'm going to assume, I haven't checked it out myself, but they make it to where you want to see what happens next with this character. Spider-Man. I mean, I remember the way it ended with Mysterio on one of the last ones that said, revealed who Spider-Man was. I mean, that alone made you want to clock in and be like, okay, well, let me see. What is this? Like, how does this continue for the next movie? Like, now everybody knows. I'm intrigued, And then there was the one with the No Way Home with when you brought in Tobey Maguire and
Andrew Garfield.
Back into the fray with this. And then you introduce other things and you bring in other characters like Dr. Octopus. You brought in Green Goblin, Willem Dafoe, no less. It was a big event film. That's the word of the day today, folks. Event film. Made you really want to spend your hard-earned money, let's put it realistically, on a trip to the movies. Because when I go, it's primarily myself and my wife, and if we go to the drive-in, my dog, but I'm not buying a ticket for my dog. Thankfully, I don't have to. She's free of charge. But for those that have families of, 3, 4, 5, some 6 even, that's an expensive time for just buying the tickets alone. And even though right now it's still one of the cheapest things that you can do, sure, but at the same time, it's still you trying to take out your entire family for a good time out. And it ain't going to be every weekend, which is why these releases are summer, winter, and whatnot. So I think that the filmmakers owe it to the audiences, especially after so many releases of mediocre films, to just continue this trend. And with that, I'm hoping that this is going to be the launch pad that is what Avengers Doomsday is going to bring to the table. And that now the bar has been lifted. Before this movie came out, it was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure it'll be $1 billion film. And I'm not saying it has to be a $1 billion film to be successful. If it's just a great film and for whatever reason doesn't hit a billion, although I would find that very unbelievable. Now Doomsday has to outdo Spider-Man,
Yeah,
honestly
true.
speaking, because otherwise it does kind of prove true what I just said. Is Spider-Man bigger than the MCU? Because if Spider-Man ends up having a bigger global takeaway, global box office than Avengers Doomsday, something happened. And that means that movie sucked or was just disappointing. In even a hair of a disappointment is noticed in this film, Avengers Doomsday. It's going to affect people. Word of mouth is going to travel. And then before you know it, they're going to be like, I'll just wait for it to come to streaming. Like, oh no, it wasn't good. Oh no, I guess I'll just wait for streaming. And if that happens, maybe Doomsday is the one that is going to decide, is the MCU back or is it not? But I don't know. I guess time's going to tell with that, as we often say. So that's going to be it for that story. And that is going to bring us to another story. Let me see. I'll go ahead and just think I had it in the wrong order here. Oops, had the silly thing in reverse here. We're going to go ahead and jump right into Kratos. And for those of you that remember our story from last week, the Ryan Hurst, who was listed to play Kratos in the Amazon production of God of War, a God of War series that Amazon was brought to you by the good folks at Amazon. Ryan Hurst suffered a torn bicep injury while filming. And because of that, they made the, I want to say, difficult decision, but I don't know. They filmed quite a bit of production with Ryan Hurst as a star here. And they made the decision to, unfortunately, let him go and recast the role. And I think the last episode we were talking, I think we brought it up that Bautista was being eyed potentially to take that role. Well, he's in talks right now. Bautista is apparently in talks to take over the role of Kratos that Ryan Hurst was not able to continue playing, unfortunately. I am caught. I don't know. I like Bautista as a celebrity, as a person, I guess. Like, I love, for those of you that have listened to the show, I love that he takes a strong position to advocate for animal rights, especially with dogs, and he's a great person. But I don't know. I'm not, whenever I see that he's attached to a film, I'm not really that intrigued to check it out. I think that it's because he's Bautista that I'll check it out. It's not really what he brings to the table that I'll check it out, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So hearing that he's going to be taking over this role, and I say in talks, but in Hollywood speak, in talks pretty much means they've agreed on terms and they're pretty much just finalizing the details. So I'm pretty sure that we have our Kratos. Maybe the announcement will happen during this recording. Maybe we'll report on it next time. But either way, I'm fairly certain we can pretty much count on Dave Bautista obtaining the role of Kratos. And I don't know. I really, really wanted to see what Ryan Hurst could bring to the table. But the fact that Amazon made the decision to just pretty much let him go and not really give him an opportunity to heal because, they just, I guess, really were on a tight timeline. I don't know. But how do you make the decision to let go of all of the scenes that you've already filmed? I don't know. Maybe they had a couple of episodes that were full episodes that are already filmed, and they're just going to scrap that. Hope that most of the footage that they have can be reused, and then cast Bautista to pretty much reconnect with the actor who's playing Atreus and establish that relationship to really sell it to audiences. I don't know. What's your opinion on this?
Yeah, I mean, especially with seeing, even though he had a very minor role in Christopher Nolan's Odyssey film, Ryan Hurst does kind of strike me as a good fit for being cast in a world, that sort of draws a lot from like mythology. So for me, this is very much a case of like, man, the what if scenario of like how Ryan Hurst would have portrayed Kratos and how it would have either been maybe a tentpole portrayal of a video game character. I feel in an adaptation, I think that is something that is going to be sorely missed. But I understand the whole sort of notion of like getting him replaced, because from what I heard, like with a bicep injury, it's something that takes 6 to 12 months to recover from, and even from there, they're gonna have to retrain Ryan to sort of get back to the physique that he was for the
Mm,
initial production of this series. So that's
that's a
a
good
lot of
point.
time. That's you're looking at a year, some months to kind of get back, to start it. And the thing is, with having a character like Atreus, portrayed by Callum Vinson, time is of the essence because kids grow really really fast. It's like their voices change, their features change, and that's going to be, I think, a harder sort of hurdle. I mean, who knows, maybe they might in the end also maybe have to recast him as well too. But for me, yeah, it's going to be one of those things too where that's going to be in the back of my mind whenever I watch this series. It's like, man, I really would have liked to see Ryan Hurst. And who knows, maybe we might get access to footage of like him in pre-production or whatever, or just kind of see him in some scenes just to kind of see. I don't know what the legality of that is, but I think that'd be kind of a cool thing to see. It's just, a just show a little bit of that footage and kind of let people make their own conclusions on that. But as far as on the subject of, Dave Bautista on this, I don't think he's the worst choice in the world to portray Kratos, I feel. I know at around the same time that production might restart with God of War, that he has been working with Henry Cavill on the Highlander movie that they're making, which
Yeah, I
I'm
believe he's
assuming,
playing the Kurgan.
yeah, which I'm imagining in that role he's probably getting, fit. He's probably kind of retraining his physique there. So as
Mm,
far as the physicality of trying to achieve that look similar to Kratos, I think that's there already. My biggest thing with, I think, Dave Bautista is that there hasn't been a lot of roles out there that I've seen to where that sort of really brings out his dramatic side. Like, yes,
yeah.
there was his role in A Knock at the Cabin. He's playing
Hmm.
Leonard, the guy that's telling, the family that, hey, you have to sacrifice one of you, or the world, is going to end, but you guys get to live. Which
Yeah.
that movie definitely had a lot of those moments of drama, and he wasn't in that movie to sort of portray as some kind of, action star or some like, buffed out dude. I mean, he looked, scary and intimidating, of course, in that film, but a lot of his dialogue and also was more soft spoken and sort of kind of more scarier in the sense of like the stuff that he's telling these people kind of is what's really setting off the tone of for them to be scared, not necessarily him, his physique or how he looks, essentially. Even in
Yeah.
Blade Runner as well too. I mean, he had a couple of good scenes in Blade Runner as well, but I just haven't been convinced too much of like what his sort of dramatic take would be. And with God of War, with playing the games and all that stuff, it's not just focusing on Kratos as a former, God of War, now that's settled down with a family, in the world, in this Viking-esque world. It's about how he has to show restraint and how he has to show that he is able to sort of temper those emotions that have really gotten him in so much trouble in the past. But now he's having to sort of juggle between that sense of, do I unleash the god within me, or do I show restraint and show my son Atreus that you can be different, that you are not what your fate is or what your lineage is. And maybe Batista can bring that out. Maybe this is his chance to finally kind of set himself apart. I'm optimistic in that sense, but again, I'm just kind of a little heartbroken about Ryan Hurst, and I feel, yeah, that as whenever this show starts up again, if it does end up being Dave Batista as Kratos, he's going to be in the back of my mind and thinking, man, in this scene, Ryan Hurst probably would have done better, and that's going to be, I think, not just me that's going to really be thinking that, but I think a couple of other people that are going to tune into the show that are going to kind of have that little bit in their mind of like, what could have been. So that's kind of my spiel on it.
That's a good spiel. I mean, I agree. I like Batista. I'm curious to see how this works with him. The movies that come to mind, and mind you, I'm kind of going through, and I guess if I had an actual list in front of me, I could probably say, oh, this, that, and the other. But the ones that come to mind that I enjoyed just because I guess it was a comedy was that movie Stuber. But his performance in there really just seemed like he was kind of phoning it in.
Hmm.
You mentioned Knock at the Cabin. he played the part, but he wasn't really a standout. I was never really impressed with his work as Drax, which is, in fairness, was one of his first major roles. So I'm not judging him based on the first film of him. Although I will say the first film that had a little bit more revolved around him, you kind of got a little bit more glimpse into his the loss of his family, which he did convey um, very well. But then at some point, it just became, and that was the character, the direction of the character, just a little more silly.
Yeah.
And he did well, but I just, you know, nothing really there that made me feel like, okay, he's a standout. And I'm not saying he's not capable. He is in very capable hands and he has a lot of promise. There was also his role. He did do well in Dune, though. I mean, smaller part, but he came out in that. Um, and then there was that other movie that he did with Jason Momoa, which was actually really good. I did Wrecking Crew. That's a good movie. If you're a fan of just those old school buddy cop movies, definitely check that one out if you haven't already. That was a good movie. Surprisingly better than what I thought it was going to be. And he did well there. But yeah, maybe this is his opportunity. Because if I'm not mistaken, this would be the first series that he's involved in. And because of that, you get not just an hour and a half or 2 hours to really pull the audience in. You get 6 to 8 episodes, maybe 10. I don't know. But if I had to guess, probably 6 to 8 episodes to really develop your character and show have a chance for audiences to just to see what you're all about, really, to see if they connect and care what happens to you next in the story. Because if you have a time where I'm wondering if they're going to be releasing these week to week or if they're going to really drop them all at once. I think Fallout Season 1 dropped them all at once. I think Fallout Season 2 released them week to week. So it makes me wonder what their strategy is going to be with this. If they do week to week, then you have more of that opportunity to really get familiar with this character, and you'll be able to tell our audience is interested in this if they continue to talk about it on a week to week basis. I don't know. He had some range as Drax, as I mentioned, for the emotional aspect of it, and in terms of the first Guardians of the Galaxy, where, like I said, I mentioned he lost his family, and it's revealed that he lost his family to Thanos, or yeah, I think it was Thanos. This role is going to require substantially more emotional depth from him. So maybe this will be the property that I'm just like, you know what? I'm all about Bautista, man. Let's see him in another movie. I want to see what he does next. And mind you, I still like the guy. He seems like a cool guy. I want to see him succeed regardless, but I'm just saying maybe I'll look forward to it a little bit more if I'm that much more enthralled with his performance as Kratos. But as we often say, time is going to tell. And speaking of time and telling, well, the proposed Paramount Skydance acquisition of Warner Bros. Discovery is, well, to put it calmly or to put it mildly, in chaos. Moving on, our next story is it's facing some difficulty right now. It's not looking too good. The deal itself is valued at $81 billion. That's billion with a B, folks. That already in and on itself is an unthinkable amount of money. It's crazy. But that's how much this merger is valued at. Well, it's roughly being challenged right now by 12 U.S. states and the Writers Guild of America, which are basically taking the position saying that Paramount and Warner Bros. Discovery essentially would reduce competition. And they're not wrong. Paramount, on the other hand, is basically saying that no, but by combining our forces in the style of Captain Planet, we are better positioned to compete with other major streaming competitors, namely Netflix, and of course now Amazon and Disney and Apple TV, if you want to throw that in there. But 12 U.S. states and the Writers Guild of America are challenging this. And because of that, this merger that I was under the impression at the time was a done deal. And I'm like, well, it's just let them, cross all the T's and dot all the lowercase J's. And, it's bada bing, bada boom, it's done. And unfortunately, Warner Brothers is going to be in the hands of Paramount. Now, I am not so sure because not only is this being challenged and taken on? But the judge, who's going to be overlooking this case, set the date for March. What is it? March. No. I'm sorry, not March. Well, it's March basically. I forget the exact date, but the trial is going to be set for March 2nd, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And that's a long time from now. And the reason that is significant is because per quarter, beginning in October of 2026, if this deal continues to remain pending, which if the trial isn't set until March, it will be, the agreement basically has them paying a $650 million per quarter, while still just waiting to close this deal. On top of that, if a cancellation or termination takes place, it's going to be a $7 billion termination fee. I'll tell you what, you slap a $7 billion termination fee on Netflix saying like, oh, so you want to cancel our subscription? I might hold on to that subscription a little bit longer if I knew it was going to cost me $7 billion. But in this case, wow, the odds are really stacked against Paramount. And I feel like the world, or maybe the entertainment industry, does not want this merger to happen. And I have to say, you can count me among them. I don't want this merger to happen. I would prefer in a perfect world, I would rather have Warner Brothers on its own, continuing to do as they've been doing, because they were slaying some big wins realistically. But in a world where it has to be sold, I would have rather have had it, and I never thought I'd say this, go to Netflix, because Netflix was gonna be their entryway into it. And who knows? It could be a wolf in sheep's clothing. Maybe they could go to Netflix and Netflix is going to be like, haha, fooled you. We're just all streaming everything. I don't know. But before that happens, Netflix was seeming pretty good. Less job losses, because they were going to need pretty much everybody from Warner Brothers to help them steer the ship. But with Paramount, you've got two people doing the same job. You're going to cut one across the board. So I'm starting to wonder if this deal is going to go through. You've got David Zaslav and the CEO of Paramount, who's basically saying like, "Don't worry, folks. This is all just bunch of hearsay and blah blah blah. This deal is going to go through. No worries." I don't know about that. I'm starting to think that this may not happen, and I have a feeling that I'm not the only one. But I don't know. What's your take on all of this?
Yep, it's never over. It's the ever continuing story that we've covered in multiple episodes, and just when you think it's done, another twist is introduced. And
yep,
yeah, I'm definitely in the camp of like, I don't want to see Paramount win this. And I was also in that camp of, you know what? It's like Netflix kind of looks a little bit better in terms of like being the owner of this, and we thought for the longest time that Netflix, kind of had it in the bag, but then here comes Paramount and David Ellison with a steel chair, and that's what's happening. But now we're in this kind of odd place where this is actually going into trial, and it's going to go through the legal system, and there's going to be, I think, more twists and turns as this kind of gets closer to the actual trial date. We also have to contend with, after this year, we'll also have a new Congress for the most part. So there could be voices within the political system as well, too, that might be changing their tune in terms of like, do they feel that this is definitely against the values of antitrust, or is it for it? And yeah, that's just the thing with this. And I'm fine with it. I mean, the whole strategy seems to be is to just kind of bleed the company dry at this point, because yeah, they're going to be paying a lot of sort of fees if this thing keeps going on, and it will be going on because the trial is set pretty far off from the October date. So it's just hemorrhaging money and money and money, and I just wonder, at one point, does David Ellison just look at his account and just say, you know what, this is just too much, and I'm out of it? Like,
yeah.
Like, at what point do you just kind of tell yourself, yeah, this is just going to be just a money pit for me. I'm just going to go ahead and let it go. I already have everything else in terms of other like media stuff. let's just see what happens with Warner Brothers if it ends up going by itself, or if Netflix kind of gets reintroduced as a buyer. Who knows? That's still way into the future. But one thing that David Ellison recently has pulled in terms of like sort of a strategy to kind of get the talks to go in a little bit sooner is that in a conversation with California's AG, Rob Bonto, he did talk about pulling Paramount out of California if the settlement
Yeah.
talks fails. So you can tell that he is actually, he's concerned about this, and he's pulling out scummy tactics to get his way. So I don't think in the end California is going to really budge to this. I think at the end it's just going to be like, yeah, we're going to see you in court. But yeah, it's a lot. and
Yeah.
and there's no real winners, I feel, with this either too. Like, I mean, we could sit back and be like, haha, he's losing money, but this is media. It's the future of what's going to happen with companies that we love, that make films, that make television series, and how is that going to be affected in the greater sphere of entertainment. And I think this is going to be one of those trials that, depending on how this ends up, if it ends up in favor of Paramount or not, it's going to shake up the industry, and it's going to sort of create a new system of like, okay, how much is too much for a company to take on in terms of just gobbling up all the smaller networks, and
Mm-hmm.
what is it that they intend to do, or like what is the end game for them? Because consolidating media is never really a good thing. Having those monopolies exist isn't really a good thing either. Like, sure, you can talk about, resources, and talk about if, a company is, really big and has, hundreds, if not thousands of people working under them, like, yeah, they can probably produce good stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
it's people that run under an independent flag, or run under those different, art house style networks or companies and production companies. Those people matter, because that is their foot in the door. If that door gets, closed ultimately because every company just wants more and more and more, then we have no industry. We have just, again, a monopoly of media, and whatever they decide to release, that's all we got. We don't have a voice. We don't have a sense of artistic merit or artistic value that's going to be measured. It's all just going to be the same, and I don't want to live in that future.
Yeah. I mean, the less, because some people might be wondering the same thing as far as like, oh, well, Fox and Disney, and there wasn't as much opposition. There was, I believe, if I recall correctly, but at that time, there were still a decent amount of pieces of pizza left, so to speak. So, yes, it raised some alarms, but now we're talking about basically taking that, pizza that was X amount of pieces available, and making the servings a lot smaller now, or I guess more taken, consumed, I guess, by one or two people instead of being able to share. And when that happens, you absolutely limit your competition. And when you limit your competition, ultimately the consumer loses out, because now you've got less competition from these companies to give them the proper motivation to continue to innovate and entertain us. And before you know it, we're back to, I don't know, maybe produce as much as you can as fast as you can without the quality. And that's where I'm at with this, is because if Paramount takes Warner Brothers, I mean, you've got what? Paramount and Warner Brothers, which is a huge thing right there. You've still got Universal, which would be what, another one. And then you've got Fox and Disney that are all together as well. So it limits the amount of, ultimately, like I said, competition. And that is not something that would be good ultimately for the consumer and for movie fans as a whole. So, as far as David Ellison, I don't know what this is going to be for him, because you mentioned, at what point does he just face it as like, okay, you're hemorrhaging money. At what point do you just essentially pull the plug? Because how much money can you really spend? The investment in the first place isn't 100% backed by him. He has other foreign investors as well that are a part of this. So I don't know. And what did I say earlier? Did I say $8 billion?
Yeah,
Roughly.
8 billion. Yeah.
No, 81 billion. I'm sorry. I don't know why I said that. It's an $81 billion investment. I think I had it down on my notes there. I was like, wait a minute, something about that isn't correct, because it has to be. It's an $81 billion investment. And it has to be because the termination fee alone is $7 billion. So yeah, $81 billion is what this deal is valued at, with a $650 million cost per quarter for every, starting October, for every quarter that the merger is not completed. And like I said, this trial isn't set till March. So he's already facing more loss. You mentioned, though, Matthias, that there are no winners in this. There's one winner I can think of. Well, one and a half, I guess. That half winner is, I'd have to say, potentially Warner Brothers to a certain degree. Because at the end of all of this, if this deal doesn't go through, they get $7 billion for the termination fee from Paramount, and they just continue on their path. And there you go. They pretty much had to do nothing to get that $7 billion. Now, I'm sure that's going to upset their shareholders because they were looking forward to bigger numbers. But, you know, $7 billion and continue as an independent entity is great. If they decide to look for another buyer, the other big winner potentially is Netflix, because Netflix can come in and be like, oh, so you're interested in selling your little company there, huh? Didn't work out over there? Well, we're not going to give you that much. We'll give you this much. And they're probably going to be able to come in under the initial bid that they were willing to pay in the first place, if they still want it. So I don't know. It's going to get interesting. I don't know if this is going to make it to trial all the way in March, or if at one point David Ellison between now and December is just going to be like, I don't know. I don't want this anymore. I'm pulling out. He does not strike me as the type to do that. I have a feeling he's going to throw as much money and play as many crude games as he can to get his way. But that's just my opinion on the matter. So speaking of David Zaslav, though, for those of you that know, we talked about a little movie that came out that was known as Supergirl, that unfortunately was a super flop. And because of that, it's natural to assume that a studio will start worrying and start reacting. And maybe you'd start seeing some nerves starting to hit from the top down. Well, at the top, you got David Zaslav. And David Zaslav is not really seeing the flop that was Supergirl as a reason to abandon the master plan of trusting James Gunn and Peter Safran. He pretty much still has, or they pretty much still have the full backing, despite the major box office disappointment that was Supergirl, unfortunately. In fact, I mean, at the same time, David Zaslav is pretty cool, calm, and collected. He's basically, don't panic. It is what it is. You take a loss, you move on, and you hope that the other pieces that are in play end up in your favor, which I've got to say, I think that that's the right attitude to have, because I think that the same way that you could look at Spiderman as being the sole piece to determine that Marvel is back and maybe saying, I don't know, I don't think so. I think it's kind of the opposite with that. And you can't look at Supergirl and the box office disappointment that it was and assume that, well, that's it for DC. It's one movie. It's one movie. We still have a whole bunch of other things that are still going to be coming out in the future. And to hear David Zaslav say he's not worried, basically, and still has his full trust in James Gunn and Peter Safran and what they're doing for DC, I think that's a good sign. But I don't know. What's your opinion on that, Matthias?
Yeah, I mean, you obviously want to have it to, or one of your big guys, from, a studio like DC, you obviously don't want people to, start ripping their hair out and start saying, oh yeah, this is all a failure and this is all for naught. And yeah, certainly realistically, one single failure of a movie isn't going to speak the end of the greater plan that James Gunn has for DC. But it is at least kind of a little bit difficult when you look at sort of like the general like pipeline of all of James Gunn's projects and all that stuff. So, I mean, you have Superman, of course, which did reasonably well, good word of mouth, got people excited. You have Peacemaker season 2, which for the most part was well regarded as well too. Then you had something like, Supergirl show up, and which I'm of the mind that I think it was a mistake to have a standalone film this early regarding Supergirl. I think something else should have came in before that.
Agreed.
But it's good to be optimistic, and yeah, I mean, I think he's a realist in this. I think there was at least maybe some sense that, or at least a plan in place for, okay, well, if Supergirl doesn't meet expectations, then okay, we have the rest of the year to kind of get to the point where we need to be, or to at least generate excitement for everything else that we have, which, for them, it's Lanterns here coming out this month. And then it's going to be Clayface that comes out in October, which I feel Lanterns will be well received, or at least somewhat popular. I think. I don't think it's going to be an utmost failure. I think people are going to tune in just because of how they're kind of portraying the show. Like, it's not sort of a straight action film. It seems there's like a little bit of sort of like drama slash murder mystery kind of going with it, which I kind of like when there's a little bit of differentiation between something like Supergirl and then something like this. That means they're kind of sort of playing up to a whole different audience altogether. So whether that works out for them, time is going to tell, but I think it's going to be good. And then Clayface, I think Clayface in any regard, since it is sort of more in line with horror fans show up for horror films. Like, that's just,
For sure.
that's just the bottom line with that. How much it costs to make that film, I don't know. I don't have the numbers in front of me or whatever, but I think Clayface is going to do reasonably well, if not a little bit better, certainly than I think what they're going to estimate. So now, the big pressure is going to be, of course, on Man of Tomorrow. If Man of Tomorrow can't get the ball rolling, or at least generate the same excitement that Superman did, and the biggest thing, if it doesn't do at least match what Superman did, if not, exceeded by at least double, then we can have conversations about, okay, what is the overall plan for DC? Because yeah, if Man of Tomorrow fails by a wide margin, then I don't know what the hell they're gonna do. I think the plan has to be that if Man of Tomorrow is the break, then they need to just start generating hits, and they need to make exactly what's Spider-Man was for this summer, an ensemble film, or at least a big tentpole blockbuster film, and they have to have classic characters in it. We can't focus on a Jimmy Olsen television show with Gorilla Grodd in the background. We can't have any of that. It's like they have to have these bigger films that are going to help generate that excitement and fund these little projects. Like, I'm not saying take away all of that, like we can't explore the entire roster of the DC universe. It's just start thinking about, what do people want in a certain format, or at least in a certain amount of time. Because I mean, the fact that we're waiting so long for Matt Reeves' Batman, even though it's not necessarily connected to DC, that's a problem. A Batman film, I mean, that film I think at this point now should have came out 2 years ago.
October, I think 2 years ago.
So the fact that we're still waiting for that it's troubling. And I think they have to understand that it's troubling. But we'll see how it goes. I'm going to tune into Lanterns. I mean, so far what I've seen with the trailers, I'm excited for. Clayface, I think, is also a day one for me as well. But yeah, that's just my thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's interesting because the same strategy, and I don't know if this is just the long game, the same strategy that they have is they're not simply building toward one giant Avengers style crossover immediately, like the way that obviously Marvel did from day one with Iron Man, that post-credit scene. DCU is simultaneously developing Superman, Supergirl, Green Lantern, Batman related projects. You got Clayface, Creature Commandos, and then the other television film projects, probably like Jimmy Olsen or now the canceled Booster Gold. It seems on paper like, wow, this is great. You've got multiple different types of niches that people could be into. Superman was very comic booky. Didn't really work for me. Supergirl kind of was finding its footing in between comic booky and what I'm assuming is what Green Lanterns is going to be, a little bit more serious in a way, especially with that ending of Supergirl. I am a little troubled by the idea of Batman 2 just, I don't know, basically never coming out at this point, which is concerning because why?
Yeah.
And then, so it's I guess the point I'm trying to make is that you've got this diversified, which when you're investing in, stocks and stuff, and I'm not a trader or anything like that, but, broadly speaking or generally speaking, it's good to diversify. It limits the amount of your portfolio taking a hit. This is a very diversified portfolio, and it's meant for a 20-year type of development when you're starting off this diversified. I feel like they needed to concentrate a little bit more in a general direction. Clayface, I could understand, but I feel like there needs to be this, how do I say, ultimate tone that this is going for. Like, at least with the DCEU, people could be like, it's just a little too dark. But at least they weren't saying, well, this one was dark, but this one was this and this one was that. I mean, once they started continuing down that path, it kind of started going all over the place, sure. But ultimately, it came down to the tone. And I feel like, I don't know if we're going to see that payoff for the DCU to have that spread out type of tone. We're going to know more once we actually see a Batman movie and a Wonder Woman and the other ones, what type of direction they're going. Because if they're all going the comic booky type path that Superman is going or was, then I don't know. You just figure out another way to make it better. I don't know how to say anything else other than that. But if they start going for a little bit, leaning a little bit more towards what I'm thinking Green Lantern or Lanterns is going to be, I'm for it. It looks like from the trailer, a good balance of humor, but also a serious tone. And that's what I want. I don't want a comic booky type of world. You could do that comic booky type of production and atmosphere, but have a little bit more serious tone to it. So I don't know. That's just my opinion on that matter. Is I feel like they're in the early stages of being so spread out that you're not able to see the long-term benefit. And what affected that even more so and made it more prominent in my belief in that was the failure of Supergirl. If you're going to spread out that far, then each of those movies has to be able to stand on its own and hone those audiences and bring in audiences and do better, way better than what Supergirl did, unfortunately, which, was decided for the most part. It was story and just, direction. So with Superman, Man of Tomorrow, you're right. That movie needs to be able to do better than Superman, if I'm being honest. I know Superman did like 622 million, and normally I'm just like, well, it doesn't have to make the $1 billion, but it just has to be successful. I think with the failure that is Supergirl, if the Lantern series doesn't do as well, why whatever measurement they want to use, because at that point you're really just talking about, views are great, subscribers is awesome, but it doesn't really do anything for the box office unless this motivates you to want to go to the box office when Superman Man of Tomorrow comes out, or to see whatever the next production is that DC is going to be putting out. That would be one of the big takeaways from this. If Lanterns comes out and motivates you to want to see what the next project is going to be, there's something in that. And I know that DC hasn't really been doing that at the end of these post-credit scenes. They haven't really been anything that leads anywhere, for whatever reason. I'm not saying it has to lead towards a ultimate, like Dark Side or something like that as the bad guy or anything like that, or lead towards the Justice League and get a hint of that. No. But I feel like if you're going to put an end credit scene, you have to have it lead somewhere. It has to be something that's going to be like, I don't care if it's just like a bat symbol or something, just as, oh wow, okay, they're starting to lay the foundation for Batman or something that's going to want to motivate the audience and leave a tone with them that's going to want to take them to the next film. Because without it, on their own right now, they're not really doing a great job of letting the movie speak for itself to leave a good impression to make you want to see the next one. So I'm really hoping that Superman Man of Tomorrow comes out and maybe won't introduce a Batman, but I feel like it needs to do another major reveal. Blue Beetle's great. That's awesome. You need another major player in there. Maybe the Flash. Maybe they can start with the Flash. Or maybe they can start with Aquaman. But if they start with either of those, the Flash or Aquaman, whoever you cast, has to be a face that's going to bring audiences in. It's good to catch a rising star, like Indy Navarrete, like we discussed before on the last episode with Marvel. But if you're going to bring in a new face, it has to be somebody that's going to bring a built-in audience with them to a certain extent. Which brings me to our next story. And that is X-Men. X-Men is going to be helmed by Jake Schreier. Is it?
Yeah, Jake Schreier.
Yeah, Jake Schreier, right? Okay. I blanked out there for a minute. I was like, why do I only remember his last name? It's going to be helmed by Jake Schreier. And I've already mentioned before, I think it's in good hands. And they've just recently announced, which at the time of reporting on this story or gathering the details, it was just that he was in talks, but apparently it is official. An actor by the name of Kit Connor has landed the role of Cyclops for the MCU for Marvel, for the MCU's X-Men. I don't know who he is. So I feel like that kind of kills the argument that I was making before about like you have to get somebody that's going to bring in that built-in audience. But apparently what people know him from is something to bring to the table. It's let's see, unless you know it off the top of your head. I have it in my notes somewhere here as far as what he's known. The only thing that I know that he's known for.
I mean, I saw him in he was in Civil War. He was one of the he was not Civil War, I'm sorry, in Alex Garland's Warfare. He was one of the soldiers there, which he plays a really good part there. And I think the other show that I know that I've heard about that he's in, I think it's what, Heartstoppers, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's sort of,
yes.
Yeah. So I don't know. With him, it's like, yeah, I don't know enough of his profile to where I can say, yes, this guy is Cyclops. But what I am able to sort of give with this, in a sense, is that I'm glad that they're making those moves now. That they're that they're generating that excitement of like, hey, the next big thing after all this is said and done is going to be the X-Men universe. And I'm like, yes, that's exactly what we need. This is exactly what I want to hear. Now, for me, Cyclops is a character that has not been done well in live action.
Unfortunately.
I don't know if that's a hot take or not, but that's my take on it there. Because as much as I love the Bryan Singer X-Men trilogy there, I always got the notion that Cyclops there was always just kind of like a little whiny and not exactly like a true leader of the X-Men. Whereas in the animated series and in the comics, it's like the whole back and forth that Cyclops and Wolverine have is that they represent sort of two ideas of like how to best lead the team. Obviously the whole thing with Cyclops is that he's the idealist. He's the one who wants to very much follow in the footsteps of Charles Xavier, and he wants to be the best, and he wants to make sure that he doesn't make mistakes and that he doesn't let down his team. That's why he trains so extensively. That's why his physique is so chiseled, because he wants to make sure that he can be at the top of his element to take care of any foe that the X-Men are going to face. And that's a very difficult characterization to sort of achieve, I feel, with what they've done in the X-Men universe, for in the early 2000s, where, like, yeah, that just, James Marsden didn't really have that, I feel. That wasn't the direction he was given for those films. It was more like, hey, you're just going to kind of be the sad guy in the love triangle that is your relationship, between Wolverine and Jean Grey. And that was pretty much it. So what I really hope for this one is I hope the characterization is closer to what I've read in the comics and what I've seen in the animated series, to where it's like, yeah, Cyclops is a badass. He's the leader of the X-Men for a reason, because he is able to sort of take on those threats, and he's fearless, and he's can go toe to toe with pretty much anything that's out there. Whether Kit Connor is going to be able to achieve this, time's going to tell. We don't know yet. This is obviously very, 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 very super early, when you think about it, but I remain optimistic. What about you?
I think he's got the look, and I think that overall there hasn't really been casting that Marvel has done that I just look back at and I'm like, I mean, within the cinematic universe, because I can't speak to everything in the series and everything like that. So strictly speaking about the cinematic universe, I've never really seen a casting that I disagreed with. And I think from what I understand, this actor is early 20s or so. And I'm going to refrain from mentioning anything else in case there's other people that haven't seen Spider-Man Brand New Day regarding any sort of casting. But for this episode, for the next episode, all bets are off. But I think that he could potentially play this role. And I'm like you, where I've seen, okay, we have had an amazing run with Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. We don't need main focuses to be Wolverine in this X-Men. I wouldn't mind seeing one of the main focuses to be Cyclops in this new adventure for X-Men. I want to see him be the leader that he is regarded as. And furthermore, I would like to see Storm be officially second in command, which is essentially what her role is in the X-Men. That would be, I think, an excellent dynamic. And I feel like I know that some people might be saying, well, that's pretty much what the animated series is, and da 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 da. And I'm not saying you have to follow the series to a T, because it's a totally different medium, but still maintain, I think, that is the way that it essentially is, and lean into that. You don't have to start off right away. You know, you could see him struggle to be a leader and have to maybe be mentored. You see that beginning relationship between him and Professor X, who he holds in high regard in terms of his as being basically almost like as a father figure to him. So they have an opportunity to take this actor and mold him into, I don't want to quote another, hero to be regarded as another hero, but he could potentially be the Captain America of the X-Men.
Yeah.
And by that, I mean, Chris Evans. And look at how much of a pop he got from returning in that trailer for Avengers Doomsday, when he was able to hold Mjolnir again. That got a pop for a reason, because it was earned through X amount of movies and time and Avengers and all that stuff. That's what you could get with Cyclops. I'm not saying I want to see a Cyclops solo movie, but I wouldn't be opposed to. They did a Wolverine solo movie. It wasn't, that great, but I'm not saying start doing solo movies with these X-Men individually, but I don't know. I don't know how you do that. I don't know if you can do that. Maybe every single movie that comes out has to be an X-Men movie. I don't know. But with that being said, within those movies, I want to see Cyclops start to take form as that leader. Maybe not right away with the first one. I get it. You got to establish a baseline and whatnot, but I definitely want to see him start to mold into someone that has that charisma and has that spirit that can embody this character. And if they casted this guy, Kit Connor, then they casted him for a reason, because they believe that he will truly embody the spirit of his character. And as listeners of this show, no, that's what I'm often quoted as saying when it comes to casting characters for the roles that they get. Can they embody the spirit of the character? But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think that we are in a great time right now as a movie fan to be able to take full advantage of all of these amazing announcements that we're getting. We've seen Emma Frost. We've now seen Indy Navarrete. We've now seen Kit Connor. Unfortunately, nothing from the DC side.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, I'm not saying, be panic mode and start reacting to what Marvel's doing. I'm just saying, I don't know, start making some casting announcements, start letting us know and start hinting at who's going to be the Batman, who's going to be playing Wonder Woman, who's going to be the Flash, who's going to start dropping little character, type of casting announcements that I'm going to assume, I hope that you have by now, because if these are projects that have been announced since, I don't know how long ago now, by now, I would say at least 2021, 2022, there's got to be something to give here, because then that's been at least about a good solid 3 to 4 years to be able to figure out who are playing these people. And if you have a long-term plan, maybe start dropping little tidbits here and there. But All right, folks. And just like that, our time is up. But as always, we want to thank you all for listening to us, whether it be on your day off or your commute to work. We appreciate you taking the time to hit download or push play on your device. We also want to remind you, if you're not already, follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Second Way to Kill a Werewolf, where we encourage you to share your thoughts and opinions on the many, many posts that we put up. Also, if you enjoyed the show, be sure to share it with a friend. It really does help us out more than you could ever know. That said, I'm Damien.
And I'm Tis.
And we will see you next time. Bye, everybody.